Hey everybody, I'm back on my trek through Disney Star Wars, and this time we're stopping at Kenobi. Now, Kenobi's an interesting mixed bag. It starts strong with Kenobi alone on Tatooine and following him, seeing him reject the call for help from the Jedi. That's all great stuff. Even the stuff with the Inquisitors on Tatooine is great. It finishes strong with a great fight between Kenobi and Vader, bringing, Hayden back into the fold. You know, again, giving Hayden that, love he deserved for the prequels that he didn't get. It's in the middle where it just kind of all falls apart because, again, this is, the result of Bob Iger learning the wrong lessons from Solo. He didn't understand that nobody really cared to know the backstory of Han Solo. Instead of analyzing why it failed on that, with audiences in that mode. Now, granted, that movie was better than it had any right being, especially given all the backstage drama that it had. But it wasn't a story anybody really cared about. Nobody really wanted to delve deeper into Han Solo. If you wanted to do a Han Solo prequel, you should have made that the TV show and had it be a heist of the week thing with Han, Lando, Chewie, and their crew. But that's not what we got. And because it failed, they learned the wrong reason and then decided that every movie that they had sitting on the slate needed to be canceled and turned into TV shows. And so that's where we start getting the problems in Kenobi. Not to say there aren't good little bits in there. There are some good bits with Leia in there, specifically the scene where they have that conversation where Obi-Wan is, relating to Leia a bit about her parents. And that is a really strong scene and a really great scene. But it's also the addition of this, big focus on Reva's, character. That's not to say that Reva's necessarily a bad character. Part of the problem is that we don't really fully understand her motivations until later, and it's done as kind of this reveal and twist. That leads us watching somebody who, in hindsight, thanks to the reveal towards the end, that is basically play acting a Sith. She's not a true believer. She's play acting this dark side Inquisitor because she wants to get close to Vader. And seeing her performance through that lens, this kind of cut off her nose to spite her face, kind of whiny, singularly focused, willing to shoot herself in the foot on a mission if it means the end result is getting closer to Vader, it then just kind of makes sense as a not fully formed Jedi kind of play acting as this kind of character. But it also leads to something way worse. Like, never mind the canon breaking around Obi-Wan having this very impactful time with Leia. And then her seemingly to only know of Kenobi as, a general that fought with Bail during the Clone Wars. Never mind that bit of canon breaking. I think what really sours everybody on the whole Reva aspect of the story, more than anything else, and what really makes that middle section age so poorly, is the fact that she discovers who Luke is, goes to try and kidnap him or kill him, and, fails in this. But where it really breaks is Obi-Wan letting her go. Because that leaves somebody out in the universe that knows that Luke is Anakin's child and that Luke is Vader's child. And that just doesn't work. It creates this sort of cognitive dissonance that comes in, that you have somewhere scampering about in the universe this person that has this, very, very, potentially, you know, galaxy changing knowledge. Not only that, she knows where he is. And we're supposed to believe this 180 turn, that she's just giving it all up and all this kind of stuff. It just absolves that, giant cannon hole that they left in this plot, in this story. Now, that doesn't fully take away from all the strengths of the show. Like I said, that opening, that ending, the little bits in the middle where, the first interaction with Vader and Kenobi, that whole section is tense and amazing. Especially when Vader first shows up and he's just murking people. Snaps a kid's neck, pulls the dude out. Like all of that is just super strong. Like I said, even the scene where he's, having that moment with Leia. But realistically, the greater involvement in the plot of the twins is superfluous. Leia's basically turned into a MacGuffin because, and I think I heard this somewhere in an interview, they needed to figure out how to get Obi-Wan off planet because nobody wanted to just watch an old man on Tatooine. Now that, to me, feels more like a Bob Iger thing than a creative thing. If you really get down to it, especially knowing what we know now with the information we've gotten from not only the issues around the hunt for Ben Solo, but also the Dave Fincher. Dave Fincher wanted to do a Star Wars. The man got his start on Return of the Jedi, and you tell him no? All because you didn't agree with him on the budget and final cut? It's David Fincher, one of the most acclaimed directors of the last 25 years. And you're not going to say yes? See, I think a lot of the problems with Kenobi are chalked up to Bob Iger learning the wrong lessons from Solo. Solo was where because they did a story that nobody really wanted or cared about. Now, it did okay at the box office, and the movie is more fun than it has any right being. But its ripple effect through what we've been experiencing with Star Wars over the last, 7-8 years since Solo came out, it has just been a marked downgrade in quality. Because instead of learning the lesson of we really need to make sure we're telling stories the fans want and care about, the lesson Bob Iger learned was The Mandalorian was a success, but Solo in theaters didn't do what we wanted it to do, so everything must be TV. Everything must be a streaming show now. So that 2-hour movie you wrote, stretch it. It's a show now. This 2-hour movie you wrote, stretch it. It's a TV show now. People wanted Obi-Wan on Tatooine during that gap. And there's any number of things. The whole story could have been Obi-Wan, trying to hide lost Jedi who've come and found him, and him trying to save them, and them trying to coax him back into the fight. I mean, that could have been the show, and it could have been really interesting, and you could have had fights. In fact, you could have gotten him off planet with that, instead of turning Leia into a MacGuffin. If not for the 1 or 2 scenes where he's relating stuff about Padme and Anakin to her, having it be Leia is really kind of meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. So there were ways you could have gotten him off planet without involving Leia. You know, but again, this just reeks of them misunderstanding what their audience wants. And I'm more and more putting that on Bob Iger and Disney than I am on Lucasfilm. I think Lucasfilm knows what their fans want to a large extent. I think that's why they're like, well, look, if we're going to take him off world, let's give the fans a badass bit of Vader. And we get that peppered through the show. Let's give them at least a taste of what they wanted. That's why that beginning is so strong. It's all the stuff in the middle where they're having to shove stuff in to try and pad that runtime to a show, where it really starts to lose its footing. All in all, I mean, you know, it's a decent show. I enjoyed it. Could it have been stronger? Yeah. It probably could have been stronger as a 2-hour movie. I've seen the Patterson cut. Now, I disagree with them cutting out the Qui-Gon scene, because I think the Qui-Gon scene is great. I think that's a great ending to the story, where Obi-Wan has now gotten his mojo back, and now he's heading off with the Force ghost of his former master to get back on track, get back on the journey to become one of the greatest Jedi Masters. And, you know, he's off on that journey. It ends on that hopeful note. The Patterson cut ends it with him meeting Luke, which isn't a terrible way to end it, but I think, you know, ending it with Qui-Gon is much stronger. But it does flow better in the Patterson cut. Never mind also the fact that it continues the weird trend of Disney Star Wars to run screaming away from anything John Williams, which I don't understand. John Williams' themes and musics are so part and parcel with, you know, Star Wars and what feels like Star Wars. For them to not use Battle of the Heroes, Duel of the Fates, and they use Duel of the Fates in the advertising, but it doesn't show up at all in the show. For them to not use Leia's theme, for them to not use these themes is so weird. It's so weird. I don't understand their just constant refusal to even tiptoe close to it. How during that Vader and Kenobi fight at the end, how they aren't utilizing those themes is criminal. I'm guessing it's a money thing, which makes it a Bob Iger thing. So, you know, Bob can eat it, you know. How that man still has a job is beyond me. But even with those flaws, I would say Kenobi is fairly solid for Disney Star Wars, as flawed as it is. You know, I would slot it a solid 3 out of 5. The good there is really, really good. It's just peppered with, in the middle, with all this stuff that just kind of drags it down and feels totally unnecessary. And feels like arbitrary decisions. Like I said, it's almost offensive that they basically turn Leia into a MacGuffin just to get Obi-Wan off planet so he can have these fights with Vader. I'm hoping that they're starting to maybe learn some of the right lessons. I'm hoping that the backlash of them, you know, not going with Hunt for Ben Solo or the Fincher movie, I'm really hoping that these things are maybe going to start kind of teaching Bob Iger the lesson. But, you know, now he's out there talking about, like, putting in AI, generative AI user-generated content on Disney Plus. So I think this dude is just so far up his stockbroker ass, he could wear himself as a hat at this point. So that's my thoughts on Kenobi. A decent show that is ruined by the fact that it should have just been a 2-hour movie about an old man sitting on a planet in hiding, trying to do his best. Like, I think that's the story we all wanted. And it's the story we probably should have got. But it's not the story they gave us. And the story they gave us, it's fine. It's good. It's entertaining enough. It's just very weak in the middle. There's a lot of filler there. There's a lot of meh there. There's also a bit of great there. Those are my thoughts on Kenobi. Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, all that. And I'll see you in the next video.